In the spring of 1987, in a basement archive beneath Boston's Public Works Department, a municipal engineer reviewing property deeds for a waterfront development project found something that contradicted every map she had been given. The file, stamped and cross-referenced with fading departmental seals, described parcels of land that should not exist. Addresses listed as submerged, foundations noted as intact beneath fill that was supposed to contain nothing but broken stone and harbor mud. She traced one notation with her finger: structure relocated whole, March 1806, foundation preserved in situ. The notation had been crossed out in different ink, then reinstated in pencil since unknown hand. Rain drummed against the small basement window as she pulled a second ledger, this one from 1873, which showed the same address with a different annotation. Building standing, grade raised 16 feet, cellar intact. The air in the archive was cold and smelled of old paper and concrete dust. Outside, the harbor fog had rolled in thick enough to muffle the sound of traffic on Atlantic Avenue. Boston's expansion into its own harbor remains one of the largest urban landfill projects in American history. Between 1630 and 1900, the city more than tripled its landmass, transforming tidal flats, marshes, and open water into solid ground. The official narrative describes this process as straightforward. Crews dumped gravel, broken brick, and excavated earth into the shallows, compacted the material, and built upon it. Maps from the period show the progression clearly, dotted lines indicating the original shoreline, solid boundaries marking new territory. Yet archival records contain persistent anomalies that suggest a more complex process, one involving not demolition but preservation, not destruction but burial. On the morning of March 12, 1806, witnesses reported seeing a three-story brick townhouse moving slowly down Tremont Street. The structure, built in 1784, had been purchased by a shipping merchant. Time equals 350 milliseconds greater than who needed the land, but found the building too valuable to demolish. Contemporary newspaper accounts describe the operation with a mixture of awe and practical detail. The house had been jacked up onto timber rollers, its foundation carefully excavated and reinforced, its route cleared of obstacles. It took 11 days to move the structure 4 blocks. What the accounts do not mention, what appears only in a surveyor's private notebook discovered in 1923, is what happened to the original foundation. The surveyor's sketch shows the cellar walls left standing, the void filled not with rubble, but with carefully placed stone, the grade raised around it to match the street level. A marginal note reads, "Foundation chamber sealed, access via coal chute preserved for owner's use." This pattern repeats throughout Boston's expansion records. Buildings relocated, foundations left intact, grade raised. The practice had precedence in European cities where medieval structures were gradually buried by rising street levels, creating underground chambers that persisted for centuries. In Boston, however, the process was deliberate and systematic. Between 1800 and 1880, more than 200 significant structures were relocated rather than demolished, and in at least 60 documented cases, the original foundations remained in place beneath the new grade. The reasons varied: structural, integrity, property rights, storage access, but the result was the same: a hidden layer of intact architecture beneath what official records describe as simple landfill. By June of 1858, the filling of the Back Bay had begun in earnest. The project would take 30 years and consume 2.5 million cubic yards of material. Gravel trains ran around the clock, dumping loads of sand and stone excavated from Needham Heights, 9 miles away. The official engineering reports, preserved in leather-bound volumes at the Boston Public Library, describe the fill composition in detail: gravel, clay, broken stone, some brick rubble from demolition sites. Yet photographs from the period show something unexpected. In one image, dated August 1862, workers stand atop what appears to be an intact brick wall rising from the fill, its corners sharp, its mortar joints visible. The wall runs parallel to the planned street grid. In another photograph, taken 6 months later from nearly the same position, the wall has vanished beneath an additional 8 feet of fill. No mention of these structures appears in the engineering reports. A civil engineer named Samuel Whitmore kept a private journal during his work on the Back Bay project. The journal, donated to the Massachusetts Historical Society in 1904, contains sketches and measurements that do not match official plans. On one page, dated October 14, 1863, Whitmore describes encountering a substantial foundation of cut stone, dimensions approximately 30 by 40 feet, depth to bedrock 12 feet, condition excellent. He notes that the project supervisor ordered the structure left intact, the fill placed around and over it, the surface graded level. Whitmore's sketch shows the foundation in cross-section, its walls thick and carefully constructed, its interior space empty. He writes, "Purpose unknown. Depth suggests commercial cellaring or storage. Left accessible via timber shaft sealed at grade. The next page has been torn out." The practice was not unique to Boston. In Chicago, after the catastrophic fire of 1871, the city raised its grade by as much as 14 feet, leaving older structures partially buried. Photographs show buildings with their ground floors converted to basements, new entrances built at what had been second-story windows. Under this video, you'll see a thanks button, a small gesture with a big meaning. By pressing it, you're not only supporting the creation of more content like this, but you're also becoming part of the very exchange we've been talking about, giving and receiving in harmony. It's not about the size of the gesture, it's about the meaning. A simple super thanks tells me these words reached you. It tells me that the effort, the late nights, and the discipline to bring this message forward, that it mattered to someone on the other side of the screen. Some property owners excavated their old cellars and continued using them as subterranean storage. In San Francisco, after the 1906 earthquake, debris from destroyed buildings was used as fill for the waterfront, but photographs reveal intact foundations left standing in the rubble, their walls rising above the fill line before being covered by additional material. The pattern suggests a widespread 19th century practice. Rather than demolish substantial foundations, engineers incorporated them into the new grade, creating a hidden substratum of architecture. On a cold morning in December of 1895, construction workers excavating for a new building on Boylston Street broke through into a void. Their foreman's report, filed with the city building department, describes a chamber of brick construction, approximately 20 feet square, ceiling height 8 feet, walls intact and dry, no obvious entry point from surface. The chamber contained empty wooden crates, iron hooks mounted in the walls, and a stone floor worn smooth in pathways between the door and the chute. Interior corners. The foreman noted that the ceiling showed soot staining in a pattern consistent with oil lamp use. He recommended filling the chamber with concrete, which was done. The building above still stands. This discovery was not isolated. Between 1890 and 1920, as Boston's building boom continued, construction crews reported at least 19 similar finds. Intact chambers, sealed cellars, foundation rooms with no apparent connection to surface structures. Some contained artifacts, bottles, tools, furniture, suggesting they had been used after burial, accessed through shafts or tunnels that were later sealed. Others were empty, their walls bare, their purpose unclear. In most cases, the chambers were filled with concrete or rubble and forgotten. In a few instances, they were incorporated into the basements of new buildings, their origins unrecorded. The technical advantages of preserving foundations are straightforward. A substantial stone or brick foundation provides structural stability, reducing settling and improving load distribution for new fill material. In areas with high water tables or soft underlying soil, conditions prevalent throughout Boston's lowlands, existing foundations act as pilings, transferring loads to bedrock or firmer strata. Engineering handbooks from the period acknowledge this principle, though they rarely discuss its implementation. The practice saved time and resources. Demolishing a well-built foundation required significant labor and explosives, while leaving it intact cost nothing and improved the structural integrity of the fill. Yet the pattern of preservation extended beyond mere engineering efficiency. Property records from the period show that many foundation sites retain their original lot lines even after burial, suggesting that legal ownership of the subsurface continued despite the surface being developed for different purposes. In several cases, deeds include clauses granting subsurface access rights to the original property owner or their heirs, permissions that remained legally valid even as the surface ownership changed hands. One such deed, dated 1879, grants access to the cellar and foundation chambers lying beneath the present grade on Lot 47, Back Bay, accessible via shaft to be maintained by grantee. The location of the shaft is not specified. By the winter of 1912, the filling of much of central Boston was complete. The city's waterfront had moved outward by as much as a quarter-mile in some areas. Hundreds of buildings stood on land that had been tidal flats or open water 70 years earlier. Beneath them lay the buried remains of earlier Boston, foundations, cellars, walls, and chambers sealed. Beneath tons of fill, some were known and documented. Others existed only in fragmentary records, survey notes, private journals, crossed-out entries in official ledgers. A city inspector writing in 1915 estimated that perhaps one structure in 10 built upon made land overlies some remnant of previous construction. He offered no source for this estimate. Photographs from the period show workers excavating for subway tunnels beneath the filled districts. In several images, the tunnel walls reveal cross-sections of the fill, layers of sand and gravel, lenses of clay, and occasional inclusions of worked stone or brick that appear too regular to be rubble. In one photograph, dated April 1917, a brick wall runs perpendicular to the tunnel excavation, its face clean and its mortar intact. The tunnel was routed around it. No official explanation appears in the construction reports. The practice of incorporating older foundations into new construction continued into the 20th century. During the construction of the Prudential Center in the early 1960s, excavation crews encountered what project documents describe as pre-existing masonry structures of unknown origin, at depths ranging from 12 to 24 feet below grade. Geotechnical reports noted that these structures were well constructed and structurally sound, and recommended incorporating them into the building's foundation system. Blueprints show several of these structures as solid black rectangles in cross-section, their interiors and construction dates unspecified. The building was completed in 1964. A structural engineer reviewing those documents in 1998 remarked in a professional journal article that the practice of building upon, rather than through or around, unknown subsurface structures represented a significant deviation from modern engineering standards, which require complete knowledge of subsurface conditions. He noted that seismic codes and foundation design principles assume homogeneous or predictable subsurface conditions. Time equals 500 milliseconds greater than / not the presence of intact but undocumented architecture. Yet in cities built on landfill, he observed, such structures are common, their existence known to excavation contractors but rarely recorded in official building documents. He concluded, what lies beneath our cities is often more than geology. On a humid afternoon in July of 2003, during renovation work on a 19th century building on Beacon Street, construction workers removing a section of basement floor discovered a brick archway leading downward. The arch was well constructed, its keystone precisely cut, its passage descending at a gentle angle into darkness. The workers notified their supervisor, who contacted the building owner. A structural consultant was brought in to assess the safety of the discovery. His report, filed with the city, describes a tunnel approximately 4 feet wide and 6 feet high, extending at least 50 feet beyond the building's foundation, before terminating in a sealed brick wall. The tunnel walls were dry, their mortar intact. The floor showed wear patterns suggesting foot traffic. The consultant recommended sealing the opening, which was done. No further investigation was conducted. This discovery prompted renewed interest in Boston's subsurface history. A group of amateur historians and urban explorers began compiling reports of similar finds. Sealed passages, buried chambers, foundations that extended far beyond the footprints of surface buildings. They cross-referenced property records, construction reports, and archival photographs. Their findings, published informally online, suggested a network of subsurface structures far more extensive than official records acknowledged. Critics dismissed the claims as speculation, noting that the sources were fragmentary and the interpretations ambiguous. Yet, the basic facts remained undisputed. Substantial intact structures existed beneath Boston's streets, their number and extent unknown. The technical term for such structures is inclusions, foreign objects embedded in fill material. Engineering textbooks discuss inclusions primarily as problems, buried debris that can shift or decay, creating voids and instability. Yet the inclusions beneath Boston are not debris. They are architecture, intentionally preserved, their structural integrity maintained. The distinction matters. Debris settles and compresses, redistributing loads unpredictably. Architecture, properly constructed, remains stable, its load paths defined, its response to stress predictable. A buried foundation, if well built, can support overlying fill more effectively than unstructured material. The engineers who buried Boston's foundations understood this. By the autumn of 2019, ground-penetrating radar and other subsurface imaging technologies had become routine tools in urban archaeology and construction planning. Several studies applied these technologies to Boston's filled districts, attempting to map the subsurface in detail. The results were fragmentary. Radar signals attenuate poorly through heterogeneous fill, but suggestive. Regular geometric anomalies appeared at depths consistent with pre-fill ground levels. Some matched known foundation locations, others did not. One survey, conducted along a 2-block stretch of Boylston Street, identified 7 distinct rectilinear structures between 12 and 18 feet below the surface, none corresponding to documented building sites. The researchers noted that without excavation, the nature of these structures could not be confirmed, and that excavation was not economically or legally feasible. Their report concluded, the subsurface of Boston contains architectural elements whose extent and purpose remain largely unknown. A civil engineer reviewing this report in a trade journal remarked that modern construction practices inadvertently preserve such structures. Deep foundations for contemporary buildings, steel pilings or concrete caissons driven to bedrock, typically bypass shallow subsurface structures entirely, leaving them intact in the soil between foundation elements. Unless excavation extends across the entire building footprint to bedrock, buried architecture remains undisturbed. The result is a hidden layer of historical construction sealed beneath the modern city, inaccessible but intact, forgotten but present. On a cool October morning in 2023, a commuter pauses on the corner of Boylston and Clarendon, waiting for a signal. The street surface is asphalt, worn smooth by traffic, patched and repatched over decades. Beneath it lies concrete, and beneath that, layers of fill, gravel and sand and broken stone, deposited over decades, compacted by the weight of the city above. And beneath that, perhaps, a foundation. Its walls are brick, carefully laid, their mortar still intact. Its interior is dark and still. Its purpose, if it ever had one, has been forgotten. The signal changes. The commuter crosses the street. Above, traffic flows. Below, in the sealed spaces between geology and pavement, history waits, preserved not by intention but by the weight of everything built since. If landfill is defined as the burial of waste, then Boston's expansion is something else entirely. It is the burial of architecture, the creation of a city with 2 levels, one visible, occupied, documented, and one hidden, empty, forgotten. The modern city knows the first level intimately. Every building cataloged, every street mapped, every utility line recorded. The second level exists in fragments, archival anomalies, construction reports, accidental discoveries. Maps do not show it. Surveys do not capture it. It persists beneath the surface, a parallel city of foundations and chambers, accessible only through chance and excavation, known only through inference and contradiction. The records do not align. The photographs show more than they should. The excavations reveal structures that official plans do not predict, and beneath the asphalt and concrete, in the spaces between water table and bedrock, something remains, not rubble, not waste, but rooms. Their walls are intact, their floors are level, they were built to last, and they have. History does not always mean remembering. Sometimes it means burial, sometimes it means preservation through forgetting. If the past is another country, buried beneath Boston is another city, waiting in darkness, its streets and cellars sealed beneath the weight of time and fill and the city that rose above it, unaware.